Hello everyone, we are live at CO2 Meter. Today we are doing a special live video as we recently did a CO2 safety poll this morning and received a lot of common questions that they were looking to be answered. So I have here our special representative, our VP of Business Development. We tend to call him the CO2 Meter guru, Joshua Pringle, here to answer all of those questions right now and live. Here he is.
Hey everybody.
All right, Josh.
So Morgan's going to read off some of the questions that we got from our poll this morning, and I'm going to see if we can get through these super quick for you.
All right, the first question, Josh, is from Joey in California. He wants to know, hey Josh, given your training, what should the average customer know about CO2 safety code requirements and overall protecting our business?
So the average customer that calls in or asks us questions is generally wanting to understand more about the codes and requirements. There's 3 main codes in the United States, and it depends on where you're located for which code is applied or used. So there is the National Board Inspection Code. These are typically boiler and pressure vessel inspectors. About half the states have boiler and pressure vessel inspectors. There is the National Fire Protection Association Code, and this covers about half the states for fire code requirements. And then the last is the International Fire Code. These are also the folks that write the building, electrical, and plumbing codes. Most of the states use all or part of the International Fire Code for their requirements. Depending on where you are, you should ask your local inspector or local fire marshal or local building official which code is being applied. You may also want to ask them for a written clarification of the code in your jurisdiction.
That was excellent. That actually brings us to our second question. We had a question today from Lydia. She is an avid follower of ours from Portland, and she wanted to know, where did all these requirements come from? How did this start?
Well, Lydia, the short answer is the requirements have come over time through the fire codes and through the boiler inspection code. It's little by little these have started to come in place. So the example I usually give people is 40 years ago, nobody had ever heard of a carbon monoxide detector for your kitchen or their boiler or pilot light and a heater. And today, carbon monoxide detectors are almost used ubiquitously across the United States and required. So what's happened over the last few years is there have been incidents where people have been overexposed to CO2 and they've either been injured or passed away. When those inspectors in those smaller or local jurisdictions have gotten together at larger major conferences and expositions, they have conversations that they individually have had incidents that they want to account for, and together they start to do things like talk about regulations and codes. Now, some customers will tell us that these are a little onerous, but please trust me when I tell you, one of the number one questions we get from customers is, I had a CO2 incident, I need to take care of my employees moving forward. So what we try to do is inform people and educate people on how to get out in front of this and have some monitoring in place before you have an incident.
That actually makes a lot of sense, Josh. That's a great answer. I think looking at an inspector point of view, our third question here is from Alan, who actually is a brewer in Texas. He wants to know, why does it feel like my inspector is all over CO2 monitors right now?
Well, Alan, unfortunately for you in Texas, this is a fairly new thing in Texas where the inspectors are starting to understand that it's in the code. There have been some small minor incidents at smaller breweries and restaurants in the larger jurisdictions in Texas like Dallas, Austin, and Houston. But likely what it is for your inspector is it's something that he's just become aware of or just been trained on, and it's now top of mind for him. So when he's going into facilities that store CO2, use CO2, or create CO2, he's likely wanting to get out in front of this and help you mitigate any exposure for your employees and guests.
Excellent. That's a great answer. In terms of triggers, Josh, what are the triggers that would require a business to really install a monitor?
Typically, what most inspectors, building or fire officials or boiler and pressure vessel inspectors are looking for is, are you storing a lot of gas? And when I say a lot, what they are typically looking at is multiple cylinders larger than 50 pounds, and or a large storage vessel, which we would call a bulk tank. Those are the main triggers of which a fire inspector or a building official would be looking at and wanting you to install a monitor for. Now, to be clear, something like the International Fire Code gives everybody the ability to either permanently monitor the space or permanently ventilate the space. No one chooses ventilation because it's terribly expensive and it has to be an engineered solution. So likely what your inspector is seeing is you're using or storing a lot of gas, and he wants the monitor installed. Now, I will tell you, the typical locations that need this are any place that have dispensed soda, so using CO2 to dispense soda, or dispensed beer. Breweries use it to start the brewing process and put bubbles in beer. You have other industrial facilities that are using a lot of CO2 during their manufacturing process, or maybe through food production, but be rest assured that if you're storing multiple cylinders or you have a bulk tank, your inspector is likely going to ask you to have a monitor sooner or later.
I think that a lot of viewers here watching were not aware of this topic. I think another topic that sometimes is undermined is the actual health effects of CO2 exposure. What are the negative health effects?
When we talk about very small amounts of CO2, and when I say small, I'm talking hundreds of ppms, that's typically when we're worried about something called indoor air quality. We're talking about the space in your office, home, school, auditorium, doctor's office, where the buildup of CO2 over time, usually from human exhaled breath, starts to make people drowsy. So the old joke is at 3 o'clock, somebody's going to grab a Snickers bar or a Coke because they're tired. Unfortunately, in most incidences, those people grabbing a Coke or a Snickers bar are tired because there's too much CO2 in their workspace or home and not enough fresh air to account for it. When we get to more elevated levels of CO2, what we would call dangerous to human health, we're talking about ppm levels above 5,000 ppm. Now that seems like a lot, but we're measuring parts per million ppm. So 5,000 doesn't seem like a lot, but as we get above 5,000 ppm is when humans start to feel like they're going to be dizzy. They might get cotton mouth, or they might get a little gunk in the corner of their eyes. They might start to feel a little nauseous. When we get up above 1 or 2 or 3%, or 10,000 to 30,000 ppm, is when OSHA and NIOSH tell us that we should start worrying about people's actual life safety. So when we get above 3% is when we typically tell people, or even OSHA tells people, that's the point at which someone should evacuate a space. So when we have some of our corporate restaurant customers, their standard operating procedures tell them when the alarm goes off at 30,000 ppm, you should evacuate all employees and guests.
Definitely things to think about, especially for those in those fields. Let's go ahead and take it back to some of our poll individuals here. We have a really great question from Frank. He's actually in Sacramento. He wanted to know what additional steps should we really be taking and proactively taking to ensure our employees and staff are safe?
Well, Frank, the best suggestion I can give you, besides getting a monitor or monitors for your space, is make sure you educate your employees on what the device is, how it works, and what to do if it goes off. We have a brewing partner there in the California area in Petaluma whose quote was, "There's no point in us buying devices unless we actually train our employees on what to do if they go off." So training your employees' education is paramount on keeping people safe.
It really is. That is the most vital. Going to our last question here, we actually have another representative, Ruben. He actually is here in Florida, just like us. He wants to know, I see CO2 monitors online for less than $100. Why wouldn't I just buy the cheapest monitor possible?
That is an outstanding question. It's one we get a lot. And it's because we design and manufacture more than 350 different devices here at CO2 Meter. What I can tell you is a lot of those devices are designed for what we just talked about, indoor air quality, measuring the CO2 in your workspace or your office or your home or school. Those devices typically are around $100, and they have very limited functionality, very limited operations. The devices we've designed for safety, we've done specifically with the safety regulations and codes in mind, specifically with what OSHA and NIOSH tell us to do as far as alarm levels. So when you look or you call and we tell you a specific device and you're a little shocked about the price, know that it's because we've built in things like specific sensors to measure those higher levels, relays to trigger things like fans and ventilation systems or fire panels, if a fire inspector asks for that, different audible alarms, different visual alarms. That's why we are considered one of the preeminent manufacturers of safety devices for CO2 and oxygen in the market, because we have learned and we've built these pieces into our devices for you. So please trust us when we tell you $100 monitor or $100 desktop device is not going to keep you safe. We wish they would. We wish we could get costs down. We continue to work on that. But we continue to focus on safety and what we can do to keep people safe. So we hope that when you call or purchase a device from us or purchase it online, we hope that you feel comfortable that we've designed this specifically for your application.
Josh, I think we really hit it home. I can't appreciate these answers more, and I think a lot of the viewers here today really gained a lot of key information. Until next time, guys, we hope you liked our answers to our frequently asked questions today from our poll, and we'll see you next Thursday. As always, if you ever have any other information or inquiries, feel free to reach out to us today. You can either speak to an expert and call us directly at 877-678-4259 or reach us at co2meter.com. Thanks for watching. Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.